First of all, man, of course, I got to start off with the big news, man. Canelo Khan. Of course, everybody's shocked. Everybody has their own thoughts on it, man. What is Paulie Malignaggi's thoughts on this fight?
Well, I feel like it's just a fight where, you get back to the same things I've been saying for the last few years. Is weight class doesn't matter, and guys, if you jump too many weights, especially with guys, stylistically and whatnot, it's a tough situation where not only is it hard to win, but this isn't another sport. Guys can get hurt, so I just feel like weight classes should be respected a little bit more. I feel like I'm from Canelo's standpoint, it's not much of a risk of a fight. I said the other day to some people, I said, the fighters aren't action figures; they're human beings. So, just because you put two big names together doesn't mean they should be fighting each other because they're in vastly different weight classes. Amir is tall, but he's not physically a guy who's a junior middle or even a middle. And I don't know. I just feel like with his chin not the strongest, and Canelo being not only a puncher at that weight, but now he's fighting a smaller guy, and I think his punch power can be even more devastating. Just putting people in a position that they can get hurt. Canelo's going to chase the money, but and the moment or whatnot. But I don't know. I don't like the fight. I think you put guys in danger when they do this. I think weight classes matter. They matter for a reason. And it's just putting this in it's a difficult situation, because I think the fight sells because both guys have a big name, but it's two big names that are, that weight classes separate them enough that they shouldn't be in the ring with each other, So, you can put all the highlight reels you want of Amir Khan, all the highlight reels you want of Canelo Alvarez. Those are all highlight reels of two vastly different weights, So when they get in the ring with each other, it's a different story, and that's kind of what people don't understand about boxing. It's a lot more dangerous than they think. And from an entertainment standpoint, I don't think it's very entertaining at all. PBC gets a bad rap, Showtime gets a bad rap sometimes because maybe we put some fights where we're trying to get our guys ahead and we're trying to maybe push our guys forward a little bit, and so they get fights where maybe they're not the most evenly matched, but at least they're not pay-per-view fights. This is a pay-per-view event where you're looking at probably a fight that probably doesn't go past 4 or 5 rounds. So I don't know. I just don't see because people look at Floyd Mayweather and how what he did to Canelo. Floyd Mayweather disarms you by changing the look so many different ways. And Canelo had to constantly readjust to the change of the look, the things Floyd did to confuse him, because every time he's changing the look and he's attacking from a different way, from a different angle, from a different look, Canelo has to reset and readjust to the target, and that's also buying Floyd time. And besides buying Floyd time, it's winning him rounds because Canelo can't adjust. Amir has no way of buying himself time. He gives you one look all 12 rounds. It's a fast look. I mean, against boxers, Amir is a very difficult guy to deal with. But this is a physical guy, Canelo. The only thing I can see is maybe Amir's jab bothering Canelo a lot because Canelo seems to have a problem with it. But even at that point, Amir is not a natural junior middle or middle. So even at a certain point, as great as the jab might bother Canelo, the fact that Amir is a smaller man will eventually let Canelo have the balls to kind of push him down and back him up. And Amir, he doesn't fight well going backwards at all.
Probably with all that said, so do you see any way, even with all you said right now, can Khan what chance do you realistically give Khan of even having a chance to win this fight, or can he even win this fight if he fights the perfect fight?
I don't think so. This is kind of the same way I felt with Miguel Cotto, Manny Pacquiao, actually. I just felt it was too big of a jump, and the guy was too strong and too big and whatnot. And I actually said some things about Pacquiao before that fight where I said if he wins that fight, he might be the best fight ever because I just didn't see a way for him to win that fight. Besides weight classes, the strength of Cotto, the physicality of Cotto and whatnot. And then I watched the fight. All it did was make me feel like he was on steroids because it wasn't the fact that he won the fight. It was the fact of how he won the fight, because you can't pull that off. In order to pull off a fight at a higher weight class, there are certain safety measures you've got to take in the ring and certain precautions you've got to fight, yet still be able to be effective. It's such a tightrope and such a balancing act to be able to pull that off. That, you know, I just didn't feel Manny could do it, and obviously he didn't do it. He just mowed right through Cotto. So for me, that wasn't a natural performance, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So by the same token, it's kind of the same thing here I'm looking at with Amir and Canelo, where, you know, you have to walk that tightrope of being effective yet being safe enough, because now you're fighting a guy that's too big. And I don't know that Amir has that ability to walk that tightrope properly, you know. He's an exciting fighter, he's a good fighter, but again, walking that tightrope is very, very difficult. And I don't think Amir can do it, you know. I don't think he can do it. Eventually, he's going to wind up getting clipped, getting caught. You know, when he gets hurt, he's not going to be able to hold on because he's too small. And if he tries to hold on to a guy like Canelo will just push him off and rip him. And I just, you know, he goes up against the ropes. He stays square. He doesn't angle. He doesn't shorten the angle on the ropes. He stays square. At center ring, he just gives you that high guard. You know, he gets off first a lot, which is good, but he gives you that high guard all the time the same way. It's stand-up high guard. Doesn't change the look. Doesn't change anything. And Canelo, you know, if you box Amir, it's difficult. But I think Canelo's not going to come to box. I mean, Canelo's just so much of a bigger guy, and I think he's going to be winging those power shots, you know, body shots and hooks and whatnot. And he hits very hard. He hits very hard for junior middleweight, let alone for a guy who not that long ago was a super lightweight in Amir Khan. So this isn't in any way downplaying Amir's ability as a fighter. This is just they make weight classes for a reason, and I think this fight's a waste of time.
And last question on that, Paulie. You know, Khan, regardless if people like the fight or not, a lot of people are giving him credit. They're saying he has balls and heart to take this fight. As far as Canelo, does he catch criticism for fighting a smaller guy, or is he just trying to make a big fight himself also?
I don't know. You know, I think Canelo, it's a smart move for Canelo and his team because he gets a big payday. Everybody's buying into the fight. You know, eventually the long-term goal for Canelo is Golovkin. So, you know, you got to get Canelo to Golovkin at middleweight without getting beat. So, you know, this is the first step in that direction, and he's fighting a big name who people are really very familiar with. Yet people that aren't familiar with the sport won't even realize that, you know, this is a guy that's out of his weight class and he has no business even being in the ring with Canelo. So people that aren't familiar with the sport will just see two names they've heard of, that they've heard of before. They'll see the highlight reels on the pay-per-view packages, which will look stupendous, make both fighters look stupendous. But those highlight reels don't tell you that these highlights are from totally different weight classes, you know. So you know, you'll think what you're seeing in the highlight reel is what you're going to see in the two when the fighters get in against each other, but it's in fact just a mirage, you know. So it's for Canelo. I mean, you know, from a fan point of view, yeah, you can criticize it a little bit. But from a business point of view, I mean, it's easy pickings for him, and it keeps him moving in the right direction. Because it's not just a safe fight, but it's a safe fight against a guy who is very well known in Amir Khan. And so people are going to say, oh, well, if it's a money fight for Canelo, then why doesn't Amir get credit for the money fight? Well, because Amir is not in a position where he has to take the toughest fight like this. You know, Amir is in a position where he can fight at welterweight and probably take on guys that he's not necessarily going to beat even at welterweight. Yet, I don't think he would put his health at risk, at least. You know, like boxing, you put your health at risk every time you get in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
If you get in the ring with Danny Garcia or Kell Brook, he's still not guaranteed to win those fights. But at least from a health perspective, it's safer. I mean, granted, he can get hurt in those fights too. It's boxing, but it's safer. You know, the weight classes are being respected. Once you're fighting at middleweight or 155 pounds or whatever, like against a puncher at that weight, like, you know, a guy who's physically bigger than you at that weight and all that stuff. I mean, I don't want to hear about anything about the height. Amir's height has nothing to do with this. It doesn't make him physically any kind of size as Amir's height. He's not a guy who should be fighting Canelo Alvarez at the weight, you know. So, you know, I don't understand the logic behind this. You know, from Amir's point of view, yeah, it's an opportunity to win a middleweight title, and you know what? But if you lose, it's a win-win situation. If you lose, you go back to welter and you say, okay, you know what? We weren't supposed to win the Canelo fight anyway. So, but what if the guy ruins you? You know what I'm saying? You don't have the best chin. Canelo is a puncher. Yeah. What if you get knocked out cold or take a vicious beating? Well, you're never the same again. You know, what if you get hurt? You know, like, that's what they're not thinking about. That's what the people that made this fight are not thinking about. Like, this is it's not a situation where, you know what, sometimes guys don't have a choice, where they're like, you know what, they're on the tail end, they get offered a big fight, and you're like, you know what, let's give it one last run. let's just take it, even though we don't have a chance, or people aren't going to believe much in it. Amir has options. You know what I mean? So it's just, and he has options. He has good options that are still tough fights, but yet I don't think they're putting him in complete danger as far as his life is concerned. I don't know. It's just a complicated conversation. It could go on and on, but I don't.
That's good stuff, though, Paulie.
I don't agree with it. I don't agree with any of this. And I think people are going to say, "Oh, PBC has made some mismatches." Yeah, PBC has made some mismatches too, and you know what? It's and they got to work on that too. Of course, I remember the fight Peter Quillen had before he fought Danny Jacobs. That guy almost got seriously hurt. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that should be allowed either. I'm not saying that at all. But if it's allowed to happen at the highest level of the sport, it's obviously going to trickle down to the lower level of the sport too. You know what I'm saying? And so, it's got to start at this level first. Weight classes were made to be respected. You had one guy who mowed through weight classes like he was crossing the street a few years ago, wouldn't take a drug test, and people actually thought he was clean. And so now, now you've got this expectancy from the media and the critics that everybody's allowed to do it. Like everybody is okay with doing it. Everybody sees a fight like this and it's okay. This is how people get hurt, because clean fighters are going to have a lot more difficult time jumping these weight classes this way, and that's how people get hurt, I just don't believe anybody who jumps weight classes that easily is clean. It's nature. Nature is nature. You're not going to, there's no freaks of nature. There's people that are more talented than others, and that's there, but there's no freaks of nature.